Here is the dream. You sign a lease, fill a room with treadmills and squat racks, charge a few hundred people $40 a month, and collect recurring revenue while they do the work. It sounds like the most passive business in retail. Then look at the receipts. In June 2020, 24 Hour Fitness, a chain founded in 1985 with more than 400 clubs, filed for Chapter 11 and permanently closed over 100 locations. According to CNN's reporting, it was carrying roughly $1.3 billion in debt from a 2014 leveraged buyout. A gym is not a room full of machines that prints money. It is a fixed-cost business with one of the worst customer retention profiles in the economy. Here is what it actually costs. Start with the build-out, because a gym is a construction project before it is a business. Commercial build-out runs $30 to $200 per square foot, depending on how raw the space is. For a modest 5,000 square foot facility at $50 a foot, that is $250,000. Reinforced flooring, upgraded electrical for high-draw cardio equipment, and HVAC capable of moving air through a room full of sweating bodies. The HVAC alone runs $15,000 to $30,000, and ADA compliance adds another $10,000 to $25,000 that almost nobody budgets for. Then equipment. A full-service floor of cardio and strength machines is easily $150,000 bought outright, which is why many owners lease at $2,000 to $3,000 per month. Cheaper today, more expensive across the equipment's life. Now the invisible layer. Business and health permits, liability insurance, legal formation, and gym management software. Legal setup alone runs $750,000 to $15,000. And you need working capital, because gyms take 12 to 24 months to break even. Add a lease deposit, pre-opening marketing, and 3 to 6 months of reserves, and you arrive at the number the dream never mentions. Most new gym owners need between $150,000 and $500,000 before the first member walks in. For a competitive full-service club, plan on the high end of that. $500,000, spent before you earn a dollar. Now the recurring stack, the part that never stops. Rent first. Commercial space runs $18 to $40 per square foot per year. At $25 a foot, our 5,000 square foot gym costs $125,000 a year in rent alone, before a single light turns on. Payroll is the second anchor. Front desk, cleaners, trainers, a manager. Run that lean and you are still at $180,000 to $250,000 a year, and payroll is fixed whether 40 members show up or 400 do. Utilities are brutal for a business that never closes and pumps climate control 16 hours a day, $30,000 to $40,000 annually. Insurance for a facility where people lift heavy objects and occasionally get hurt, $8,000 to $15,000. Software to run billing and access, $75 to $200 a month. Equipment maintenance and replacement, because a broken machine is a refund magnet, another $15,000 to $25,000 a year. And marketing, the cost of replacing the members you are about to lose, realistically $25,000 to $40,000. Add it up. Rent, payroll, utilities, insurance, software, maintenance, and marketing land a mid-size independent gym at roughly $450,000 to $560,000 in annual operating cost. That is the number you must clear every year before you personally earn anything. So how does the money come in? One membership at a time. Say you reach 1,500 members, a strong number for a mid-size club, at an average of $40 a month. That is $720,000 in annual membership revenue. Add personal training and a few ancillary sales and call it $760,000 gross. Subtract the operating stack of roughly $540,000 and you are left with about $220,000. until you remember rent and payroll were estimates on the low side, that most gyms never hit 1,500 paying members, and that the average membership fee across budget-heavy America sits closer to $40 than $60. Tighten the model to what is typical, and net operating income for an independent mid-sized gym lands between 10 and 15% in a good year. On $700,000 of revenue, that is $70,000 to $105,000 of profit. For a business that cost you $500,000 and personal loan guarantees to open. The margin is real, but it is thin, and it assumes every member you sold this year is still paying next year. They are not, because that entire model rests on one number almost no first-time owner takes seriously, and it is the single number that decides whether a gym survives or quietly bleeds to death. That number is churn. According to the Health and Fitness Association's 2025 benchmarking report, the industry's first major study since 2019, covering 175 companies and more than 17,000 facilities, the average annual member retention rate is 66.4%. Read that as its inverse. Roughly 1 in 3 members quits every year, and it is getting worse. Back in 2015, IRSA measured retention at 71.4%. The industry has shed about 5 points of retention in a decade. The damage is front-loaded and seasonal. Half of all new members quit within the first 6 months. The January resolution crowd, your biggest sign-up wave, is the worst of all. 63% of January joiners cancel within 5 months. You spend the most to acquire the members least likely to stay. Nationally, Americans burn an estimated $1.3 billion a year on memberships they never use. And that breakage is quietly propping up the entire industry's margins. A gym isn't selling fitness. It is selling a subscription it hopes you forget you have. When members stop forgetting, the model cracks. Which brings us to the company that ran this model at massive scale, survived for 35 years, operated hundreds of clubs, and still died in a single bad season. 24 Hour Fitness was founded in 1985 and grew into one of the largest chains in the country. Around 700 gyms globally and more than 400 in the U.S. In 2014, a group led by AEA investors and the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan bought it from Forstmann Little for about $1.85 billion, loading roughly $1.3 billion of debt onto the company in the process. For 6 years, that debt was serviceable, as long as the members kept coming. Then March 2020 arrived. The doors were forced shut, and a business with 70+% fixed costs suddenly had close to zero revenue. On June 15, 2020, 24 Hour Fitness filed for Chapter 11 and announced it would permanently close more than 100 locations. By the time it emerged that December, it had eliminated $1.2 billion of funded debt and shrunk to roughly 300 clubs. It was not alone. Gold's Gym filed in May 2020 and shuttered around 30 corporate locations. Town Sports International, owner of New York sports clubs, filed in September with about 200 gyms and a 7,000-person workforce. The CEO of 24 Hour Fitness blamed the virus. But the virus was the trigger, not the cause. The cause was a capital structure built for a business that never has a bad quarter. This was not bad management. This was industry structure meeting reality. Now the cost that never appears on a startup projection, the true price of acquiring a member who leaves. Picture the classic promo. First month free, no join fee. On paper, it looks like a win. A new member signs at $40 a month. Project them over a year, and you booked $480 of revenue. Now count what the spreadsheet hid. Marketing and onboarding to land that member runs $60 to $100. You gave away the first month, so the $40 is gone. Staff time, the access fob, the software seat, and the servicing cost eat more. You are $150 in the hole before this member pays you twice, and half of them quit inside 6 months. That January joiner who cancels in month 4 paid you $120, cost you $150 to acquire and serve, and walked. The profitable new member was a $30 loss, and you ran that same promo across 1,000 people. The gyms that die don't die from empty floors. They die from paying to fill them. There is another cost growing faster than any other line item in this industry, and it attacks the one thing gym profitability secretly depends on. That thing is the forgotten membership. Remember the $1.3 billion in unused dues, the breakage that quietly turns thin margins into real ones. Regulators have noticed. Auto-renewal and negative option laws now exist in a growing majority of states, and enforcement has escalated sharply over the past decade. California's automatic renewal law and similar statutes require clear cancellation paths, and the Federal Trade Commission can pursue civil penalties that run into the tens of thousands of dollars per violation. When a gym makes cancellation deliberately hard, the model much of the industry was built on, every membership becomes a potential violation. Do the math on the exposure. A single class action settlement over deceptive cancellation practices can reach 7 or 8 figures. For a business netting $70,000 to $100,000 a year, one enforcement action or one class action does not dent the margin. It ends the company. This is the asymmetry. The practice that generates your hidden profit is the same practice that can erase the entire business in one legal event. Scale looks like the escape. Some things genuinely get better. A chain buys equipment at volume discounts, spreads software and marketing across many locations, and builds a brand that lowers acquisition cost. Purchasing power and per-member overhead both improve. But other things get catastrophically harder. Every new location multiplies your lease obligations, your fixed payroll, and your regulatory surface area across more jurisdictions, each with its own auto-renewal law and injury liability climate. Worst of all, scale is usually financed with debt, and debt is fixed. A single gym with a bad month cuts an owner's pay. A 400-location chain with $1.3 billion in debt and a bad quarter files Chapter 11. At a certain size, this stops being a fitness business and becomes a leveraged real estate and subscription billing operation that happens to contain dumbbells. Those are completely different businesses, and the second one is far more fragile than it looks. Put it together with one $450,000 gym. In the optimistic scenario, you hit 1,500 members at $40, generate $760,000, run costs of $540,000, and net about $150,000. A 20% year. Beautiful. Now the realistic year. Your equipment lease renews higher and a chiller fails, costing $18,000 unplanned. A member tears a knee, files suit, and defense plus deductible runs $40,000. And churn spikes after a competitor opens 2 miles away, pushing you from 1,500 members to 1,200. A $144,000 revenue hit. Recalculate. Your $150,000 profit is now a loss of more than $50,000 in a single year. The difference between those two scenarios is one equipment failure, one lawsuit, and one new competitor. None of these are exotic disasters. All three happen to someone in this industry every week. Most independent gyms operate on razor-thin margins, and a large share never reach break-even inside the 12 to 24-month window the capital was sized for. When they fail, it is almost never because the owner couldn't coach or program a workout. It is financial and structural. They ran out of runway before retention caught up with acquisition. The survivors share 5 concrete traits, and none of them are motivational. First, they open with at least 6 months of full fixed costs in reserve, not 2. Second, they own or lease equipment conservatively and fund replacement from a dedicated line, not from monthly cash flow. Third, they measure churn monthly and treat the first 90-day retention rate as the primary business metric, because a 5-point retention gain compounds harder than any new member push. Fourth, they keep cancellation genuinely easy, pricing on value instead of on breakage, which removes the legal time bomb entirely. Fifth, they refuse to finance expansion with debt-sized, for a business that never has a bad quarter, because every gym eventually has one. So go back to the dream, the quiet room of machines that runs itself while members pay. The truest number in this entire business is $1.3 billion. The dues Americans pay every year for gyms they never walk into. That is not a fitness business. It is a subscription that survives on being forgotten. And the moment people remember, or regulators force the reminder, the margin disappears. Subscribe,